This man is being chased by a large group of brides. This might be the ultimate dream for many men, yet he doesn't seem excited at all. Terrified, he keeps running and reaches an intersection where even more brides come from all directions. Facing thousands of brides blocking his way, he's forced to climb a ladder. If he moved a bit slower, he would have almost lost his dignity. The man's name is Deshaun. He has a car, a house, and his parents have passed away. But he has always been reluctant to enter the hall of marriage because he believes a man should be like a wild horse, galloping across the plains, chasing the most primal desires. Desires that shouldn't be tamed, because on the vast plains, you can try all kinds of sweet grasses, tall grass, short grass, black grass, pink grass, thin grass, fat grass. You can constantly look for the next target. That's what a beautiful life is. However, sometimes a wild horse will meet another wild horse. After all, they're the same kind. Whenever he sees a friend getting married, it's like a wild horse being bridled, never again having the chance to gallop across the plains, only to be tamed at home. He feels it's very sad. However, this soon happened to him. Jimmy is his grandfather's only grandson. To hold a great-grandchild as soon as possible, his grandfather gave him an ultimatum to get married quickly. To help Jimmy succeed in proposing, his grandfather even offered the engagement ring he and his grandmother used back in the day. On the third anniversary of meeting Annie, Jimmy formally proposed to her. However, his proposal wasn't romantic enough. Annie thought he was being ridiculous and rejected his proposal on the spot. This bizarre proposal quickly became a local legend. However, Jimmy's biggest worry was that this shouldn't reach his grandfather's ears. As it turned out, it never would, because his grandfather passed away. His grandfather left him a video will, mentioning a huge inheritance, but there were conditions to be met to receive it. The old man left his grandson a massive inheritance of $1 billion, but to get this money, he had to agree to a few conditions. First, he must get married before the age of 30. Second, the marriage must last more than 10 years. Third, they cannot be apart for more than 1 day each month. Fourth, within 5 years. There must be a child, otherwise he won't get a single cent of the $10 billion. The other conditions aren't difficult, but there are less than 30 hours left until his 30th birthday. For those $10 billion, they must act immediately. First, they changed into new outfits, hired a priest, and got a luxury car. Jimmy arrived at Annie's doorstep. With a ring in hand, he knelt down and knocked on the door, but it was Annie's sister who answered. She told Jimmy that Annie had gone to Athens for an urgent task and would be back in about 3 weeks. 3 weeks would definitely be too late, so they rushed to the airport to intercept her, but got stuck in traffic. Jimmy had to get out and run. He managed to reach Annie before she boarded the helicopter and proposed to her, leaving Annie completely bewildered. Then, his friend Fatty arrived in a car with the priest in the backseat and a strange banner on the car. Jimmy wanted Annie to marry him immediately. Annie threw out 3 soul-searching questions. Are you really sure? Are you really sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? The barrage of questions left Jimmy dumbfounded. Was his wild bachelor life really coming to an end? While he was in a daze, Annie felt he wasn't truly sincere about getting married and then boarded the helicopter and left. She would be gone for 3 weeks, and his beloved was leaving. Jimmy felt that the $10 billion didn't matter anymore, as he had managed to live without it before. The lawyer told him that he had accumulated not only $10 billion in assets but also a factory on the verge of bankruptcy. If he didn't marry, the factory would be acquired by 7 major companies, and thousands of employees would be laid off, affecting the happiness of countless families. Women would suffer from the cold, and children would go hungry. Looking at the lovely people in front of him, Jimmy's heart softened. He had already filled a box with photos of his ex-girlfriends, planning to choose one from them. The first was a stock trader, financially independent and unconventional. When Jimmy approached her and explained the situation, she gave him a hand gesture in return. The second was a clothing saleswoman, who was once Jimmy's true love. Upon seeing Jimmy, she immediately threw herself at him, saying she was willing to wait a lifetime. When Jimmy proposed marriage, she immediately agreed. Just then, Annie passed by on the street, and Jimmy quickly ran out to chase her. Annie couldn't find it, returned to the store, and the clothes had already caught fire. The third one was an actress, not Jimmy himself, and she had long forgotten about Jimmy's existence. The fourth was a college student who didn't believe in marriage. The two had a big argument due to differing opinions, and clearly, this marriage didn't work out either. The luxury car was so infuriated it was scrapped. They could only take the bus to continue searching. The fifth was a female police officer who liked violence. As soon as she mentioned marriage, she got a good beating. The sixth was a female chef who loved cooking. For her, radishes and cabbage were her true love. The seventh was a tall and aloof model. Upon hearing about money, she agreed without a second thought. The much-anticipated wedding was about to take place. The lawyer seemed to have not explained the conditions clearly. After marriage, they could be apart for at most 1 day a month. The model quickly went to the side to smoke a cigarette, knowing that even if they didn't sleep in the same bed, it counted. For $10 billion, she thought she could manage it. After all, 3 years would pass in the blink of an eye. Jimmy said the real term was 10 years. The model went to the side to smoke another cigarette, knowing she could be completely free within 10 years. For 10 billion, 10 years was nothing. The lawyer mentioned that a child must be born within 5 years. The model went to the side to smoke again, her small hand trembling as she lit the cigarette. Thinking of the 10 billion, she took a few deep drags, but in the end, she still got in the car and quickly drove away. There were less than 17 hours left. The lawyer suddenly thought of his own daughter. Although Jimmy liked sweet wild grass, his 15-year-old daughter was still too young. The next morning, just as the sun was rising, his friend Xiaopong said he would help find a bride and told Jimmy to be at Paul Church by 5 in the afternoon. Annie, who didn't go to Athens, felt a bit regretful and kept calling Jimmy. But Jimmy was too busy trying out potential brides and had no time to answer her calls. The priest told Jimmy that the most beautiful thing imaginable in this world is growing old slowly with the one you love. This made Jimmy think of Annie again. He still couldn't let her go. Annie's call was answered by Xiaopong. He didn't go to Athens and arrived at the church a little after 5. Jimmy, as agreed, arrived early at the church. Since there was still time, he planned to lie down and take a nap. It turned out Xiaopong had placed an ad for Jimmy. Next, whether it was a housewife or a motorcycle mechanic, whether it was a girl on a blind date or a restaurant waitress, brides in wedding dresses were all heading towards the church. When the lawyer and Chubby arrived, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. The church was filled with brides in white. Jimmy woke up and was even more shocked. The entire church was a sea of white. Faced with so many people, someone suggested there should be some selection criteria, whether it's height, weight, appearance, or measurements, skin color, education, or job nature, there should be a standard. Jimmy said his thoughts were like most men's, but he didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Faced with a barrage of questions, Jimmy didn't know how to respond. At this moment, Chubby stepped forward and said that Jimmy not only had no money but also didn't want to marry anyone. This was all a prank, and everyone should leave quickly. There was still a real wedding to come. This left Jimmy completely bewildered. The angry brides demanded an explanation, and Jimmy was so scared that he quickly ran out. Chubby told him that Annie was about to return. He asked everyone to stall here while he went directly to the station to find Annie. But as soon as he stepped onto the street, the brides spotted him. More and more people started chasing him. Jimmy was so scared that he quickly ran. Unexpectedly, the street became more crowded, so Jimmy quickly got into a taxi and asked the driver to head to the train station. On the train, Jimmy found Annie and took out a ring to propose again. Annie refused again because she saw the ad in the newspaper. After a lot of persuasion, Annie finally agreed. The priest and lawyer had already arrived at the station. Annie managed to find a wedding dress, and well, it would have to do. When she opened the bathroom door, outside was already a sea of white. Jimmy was being chased by them. Faced with thousands of brides, Jimmy was forced to climb a ladder. The priest had to use the police car's loudspeaker to give his speech, but at that moment, Annie was nowhere to be found. The priest hadn't finished his speech when he was almost beaten by the enraged brides and had to quickly hide inside the police car. The priest asked Jimmy if he was willing to take Annie as his wife. With the help of the lawyer and Chubby, Jimmy finally saw Annie, and she loudly answered that she was willing. Finally, with the help of the lawyer and Chubby, Annie climbed up the ladder, and the two kissed passionately, which moved Annie to speak from her heart, and all the brides stopped pestering them. They finally completed it at the last moment. From then on, they lived a shamelessly happy life. The movie, The Bachelor, ends here. Faced with Eleven's inheritance, Jimmy finally decided he no longer wanted to be a wild horse, thus giving up his prairie. This movie tells us that the best way to tame a wild horse is with money. I also want to be tamed forever. So, what should I do? That's it. If you want to see more great movie reviews, please follow me. Bye bye.